Leah, we forgot something really important.
Okay. What do we forget?
The show is called Rock That Doesn't Roll, but
Right.
we haven't talked about hip hop, the most popular form of music in the world.
Yeah, one of the biggest questions that I had to work on writing about contemporary Christian music was, why didn't contemporary Christian music have a ton of hip hop and rap on the charts in the 1990s? Because that was the era. It was really the end of rock and the beginning of the dominance that we now see on the charts.
Yeah, and they were trying. DC Talk had I Love Rap Music, and it came out in 1990.
Rap music, the sound of the time. You sort of talk lyrics to rhythm and rhyme and then deliver in various ways, some sort of preach and some sort of play.
Which is the same year that a rap song topped the mainstream charts, right? Vanilla Ice with Ice Ice Baby.
Yeah, in CCM time, that's actually not too terrible. There wasn't like a super big lag time, but that was one of the only groups that charted regularly that included hip hop and rap. What kept rap and hip hop from taking over the way that it did in mainstream music?
Yeah, why didn't rap take over the charts?
Rock.
From PRX and the Big Questions Project, this is Rock That Doesn't Roll. I'm Andrew Gill, a music journalist raised on Christian music.
Rock.
And I'm Leah Payne, a religious historian and author of the book God Gave Rock and Roll to You, A History of Contemporary Christian Music.
So-called Christian rock music.
In each episode, we look at how Christian music shaped the world we're living in now by focusing on one specific aspect of that world.
Today on the show, why did Christian hip-hop fail to launch on the contemporary Christian charts? And what did it feel like to devote years of your life to that effort?
Their rock is not our rock. Rock that doesn't
Now, a big question like that never has just one answer, so we're going to find as many possible answers as we can fit in the show. And of course, Leah, neither of us are scholars of hip-hop, so I'm glad you had some academic colleagues for us to turn to when we began our investigation into Christian hip-hop.
I'm Dr. Jonathan Calvillo, Assistant Professor of Latinx Communities at Candler School of Theology at Emory University.
Jonathan Calvillo documents the history of Christian hip-hop and knows many of the reasons why it never took over the mainstream CCM industry. He knows so much in part because he grew up alongside the genre, often called holy hip-hop.
I have a book that will be coming out this fall about how hip-hop was received in the Los Angeles area within primarily Latinx communities.
Right away, Jonathan told us, remember, that hip-hop is not just music. There are many elements, including breakdancing, DJing, graffiti art, and rapping.
There were a lot of Christian young people that were already engaged in other forms of hip-hop. They weren't necessarily putting out records, but they were actually participating, especially in forms of hip-hop dance. So breaking, or what we would call B-boys and B-girls.
It's a point that's often overlooked in the history of mainstream hip-hop, too. The commercial sale of music wasn't the point. Jonathan says in the beginning, hip-hop, holy or not, was a multifaceted way of life. Music was just one aspect of it.
A lot of people credit a song called Bible Break by Stephen Wiley as really the beginnings of Christian hip-hop.
The Bible is the holy book, so let's open it up and take a look. We got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicle.
I can even say personally, that was one of the first times that I saw Christian hip hop performed in church. And so Bible Break in many ways was instrumental, we might say, in breaking Christian hip hop into the church world.
It's like the Rapper's Delight by Sugar Hill Gang, kind of that moment for hip hop.
Yes, that is a wonderful comparison.
After Bible break, a lot of Christian performers saw rapping as just one more way of conveying their gospel message. Probably none more than Carmen.
People get addicted to new things every day. Television, videos, yo, what can I say? No shopping till they dropping, hopping at the mall, yakking on the phone. Who else should we call?
So there was a little bit of Christian rapping happening in the 80s mainstream, but it didn't fit the definition of hip hop. It was more like the rap appropriation that was everywhere in those days, even in cereal commercials.
I'm the master rapper and I'm here to sing. I love Fruity Pebbles in a major way. He loves Fruity Pebbles in a major way.
As an academic, Jonathan is interested in documenting hip-hop culture, not just rap music. And he zeroed in on the community he grew up in, Southern California. It turns out he was in the midst of one of the only holy hip-hop scenes in the country.
What I've found in my research is that Los Angeles was one of the primary places where Christian hip hop became a scene, meaning there were actually events and locations that young people could go to experience Christian hip hop on a regular basis. One of those places was a church and a church movement called Victory Outreach. In the mid to late 80s, Victory Outreach became a hub of Christian hip hop.
Victory Outreach was a network of churches founded by Sonny Argazzoni, a guy who grew up in Brooklyn and overcame a heroin addiction when he became a born-again Christian in the 1960s. By the mid-1980s, there were dozens of Victory Outreach churches in California focused on reaching young people living on the streets.
They had this night that became a holy hip hop night, right? And so they would have DJs and dancers and rappers. And so more and more young people started to show up to these events.
This community of Christian hip-hop heads weren't necessarily youth group kids who'd been sheltered in the evangelical bubble their whole lives. A lot of these kids were active in the hip-hop world and were just dipping their toes into church stuff. Jonathan told us one of the most significant creative types involved with this scene at Victory Outreach was a guy named Chris Cooper, a.k.a. Super C, a.k.a. Soup the Chemist.
Once again with that spiritual fitness, I'm always down for the drive-by witness. I roll up real slow, then I fire. I hit a gangbanger and a backslider.
Soup the Chemist is a great person, I think, to sort of look at as a case study because he came from those communities. He toured those churches. He went through all those financial struggles and whatnot. And he's still around. He's still making music, actually.
On Jonathan's advice, I read Soup the Chemist's autobiography, Through My Windows, and interviewed him about his career. I wanted to see if we could glean more reasons for hip-hop's failure to launch commercially from his individual story. The first thing to know about Soup is that he was into hip-hop before he was into Jesus. In his book, he says he was an alcohol-drinking, weed-smoking DJ, but
what happened was my equipment had got stolen. And all this weird stuff was happening in my life. I just really started plunging into the things of God deeper. And I just couldn't get into the choir music at all. I couldn't get into it. So I just started writing raps about my new experience.
Man, I'm changed. My life is different, and it's terrific, nothing scientific. All things have passed away and everything's new. I don't like to do the things I used to do. I
was driving to go get something to eat, and I saw that there were Christian bookstores, and I went, oh, wow, they got bookstores. So let me go up in here. It was a place called Bereans, and when I was walking through there, they had this big pinup of a dude named Stephen Wiley and Mike Peace, and they were a Christian rap, I guess. So I was like looking at it like, whoa, what is this?
My name is Michael Peace, and I'm a Christian MC. The reason why, because Jesus died for me. I'm too hot to handle, too cold to hold, because my life is God controlled.
Before long, Soup had a few songs together and got invited to perform at Victory Outreach. He was nervous that he might accidentally swear when he was on stage.
So I went there and we performed. It was just a small little, meeting that night. But after that, he calls me again and says, "Hey, man, is there a way that we can get you to come again in like 2 weeks?" I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess." Yeah.
Yeah.
So we walk in there, places to capacity. I say there was about 600 people up in there. I had 1,000 cassettes with me, and I sold like 400 cassettes that night, man.
Wow.
Victory Outreach Church, because it was a network, it provided a number of different platforms. So artists could, in a sense, tour across some of these different churches and have different audiences regionally. And in fact, some of them ended up touring the Southwest, for example.
They would rent a flatbed. We would hop on the flatbed with the equipment, and they take us right into the neighborhoods, man.
Soup and his group, SFC, Soldiers for Christ, toured Victory Outreach churches in the neighborhoods and all the way across the country to New York.
Yo, I did my dues and I did my time. I paid the price, now I'm a soldier for Christ. But when I say soldier, I mean it to the extreme, because I'm not compromising anything. See,
Now, Victory Outreach comes from a Pentecostal background. The pastors of Victory Outreach were trained at the Latin American Bible Institute in La Puente, for example. And La Puente, California, at the time, that became, in many ways, the hub of Christian hip hop.
Did you think about yourself as artist or entertainer, or did you think of yourself more as a missionary, or was it both?
That's a very good question. I saw myself as both. And I remember telling my crew, on this stage, this is entertainment. We're entertaining people. So when we get off this stage, it's kind of a mandatory thing for us to go to our product table, hang out there and talk to people, because that's when ministry kicks in.
Okay.
That's exactly what we did, man. We literally would stay at that table until they were telling us, "Hey, we're about to cut the lights off in here. I think you guys need to go ahead and go now."
Yeah.
Because of that mindset, to this day, I still get letters, pictures, emails from people who were at our gigs, how much that meant to them. I just get these deep emails, man.
It's not uncommon for performers to connect with fans at the merch table after a show, but Soup seems to have taken the concept to another level, almost providing free counseling to fans. Add to that commitment the near non-existent profit margins of these tours, and we may have arrived at another reason why Christian hip-hop never took off in the peak era.
Yeah, on their first tours, like, business was not at the front of their minds for SFC. They were going out like missionaries, expecting God to provide for their day-to-day needs. They weren't like other artists, even in the CCM world,
Right.
like, they didn't have enough cash to repair their van a few times.
Wow.
And they would just be stranded in random places. Their first tour, it broke down 3 times.
Wow.
And they just put the tour on hold, and they worked odd jobs until they made the money to repair the van. And they were only able to do this because they were touring in this non-traditional way. They were staying at Victory Outreach halfway houses.
Wow.
And they were playing these churches. And so the lodging was free, and the churches, they could just move the concert date. It wasn't like a venue where they had someone else booked 2 weeks from now,
That's amazing. You can really see how that network sustained the work and allowed them to continue.
Yeah, and it didn't always work out for them.
We were totally in debt every time we came back home, man.
Coming up, there was one group that seemed to defy gravity in the Christian hip-hop market.
You know the deaf hip-hop
Some of you already know who it is.
with the tiny snare. The subwoofer makes your neighbor stab.
Do we really consider DC Talk hip hop? You know what I mean? If I took their recordings to the people I grew up with or I was around, they would call that corny. So
Rock that doesn't roll.
I heard about DC Talk at the GMA. That's where I actually heard them and met them. I had never heard anything about them before that.
Jump on the job and live for him.
Toby was actually a really cool dude, man. Of course, you know, I didn't think it was hip hop, but it was. They were good at what they were doing. Let's put it like that.
Soup met Toby Mac, the rapper in DC Talk, at a meeting of the Gospel Music Association in Nashville.
SFC had gotten involved with a Christian record label called Broken Records. It was based in Southern California, and it was run by two white frontmen of early 80s Christian alternative and punk bands, Ojo Taylor of Undercover and Gene Eugene of Adam Again.
That's how Soup wound up in Nashville, meeting with Gospel Music Association people just before CCM's version of the Grammys.
I remember Joe taking me to the Dove Awards.
Uh-huh.
I remember walking in this room and he said, yeah, man, I just want you to do one song for these people here. We're trying to get inside the bookstores and they're not really familiar with anything we're doing. So I said, all right, cool. No pressure. So it was the weirdest feeling ever, man. First off, I'm the only black dude in there, right? The place is packed with all these people with ties on and
You're in Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm Nashville, Tennessee, and so I went in there, man, and did my song. And I'm telling you, dude, while I'm rhyming, I'm doing this song, they're literally no heads are moving, nobody's clapping. They're just staring at me, man.
Imagine Soup's inner monologue during this performance. Am I bombing? Did I accidentally swear? Do they hate rap music? Is it me? Is it them?
So I had to literally block them out so I can have my energy, right? And as soon as I finished the song, standing ovation, man.
Oh, wow. Not only did they love it, but even better.
You know, Joe, of course, he's there for the business. They ordered all kind of stuff for the bookstores and all this. And he comes to me and he says, man, you know that they're talking about creating a Christian hip hop category now. I was like,
for the
what?
Devil one. Wow.
I said, yeah, I said, what? He's like, yeah, they don't have one, but they're going to create one now. So they were like, man, this is a thing.
The GMA Dove Awards added the Rap Song of the Year and Album of the Year categories in 1991. Certainly, Soup's performance had an impact, but it also just so happened to be the year DC Talk's second album, New Thing, would be eligible for awards.
Maybe things were changing. Maybe real hip-hop artists like Soup would be recognized by the Christian industry. Unlikely things were happening around this time, like the star of this CCM single from 1988, now being at the top of the mainstream charts.
MC, hammer in effect, I'm against the wall, and we got the power to make it fall. No effort, no chance, so get involved. We got to come together against the wall. Segregation, and it's like that.
And real hip-hop in the secular world was seeing commercial success. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Eric B. and Rakim, EPMD, Biz Markie, the Beastie Boys, MC Lyte.
There was a lot of excitement about rap music in the late 1980s and early 1990s in the mainstream and the underground Christian music industry. But there was a bit of a disconnect between the streets and the Nashville establishment.
Thank you for giving to the Lord.
Hip-hop has always had this commitment to authenticity, right? Keeping it real, and not just real within yourself in terms of representing yourself authentically, but also representing hip-hop culture in an authentic way.
Soup was not finding much representation of authentic hip-hop culture in Nashville or in DC Talk. But his label bosses valued authenticity, even if they came at it from the punk rock angle instead of from hip-hop culture. He remembers bonding with Gene Eugene when they went to the Cornerstone Festival together.
It's this big festival in Chicago. And I'm like, of course, yeah, let's do it. So somehow Gene worked it and got me on the new artist stage. We go to do sound check, and of course, Gene is doing my sound. And I tell you, bro, the new artist tent filled up so much that they had to put security in the front. It was over capacity. It was you couldn't cram any more people in there, right?
Yeah.
And this is sound check.
Right.
So after the sound check, they start clapping and all that. And I'm tripping out because, I've never experienced anything like this. And we're telling them, hey, they'll be back on in like 40 minutes. This was just a sound check. No one left.
Like Andrew and Peter, Jesus told them, come along with me and be fishers for men. Well, that's the way I am, and that's the way that I go. See, the beat is the bait, and the rap is the pole. So what they're calling.
And from that experience, me and Gene just got close, man. And that's when I started really seeing how artsy and how great he was at mixing and, just studio work.
If you've listened to much Tooth and Nail music, you've probably heard some of Gene Eugene's studio work for Starflyer 59, Mike Knott, Plank Eye, or The Insiders. He was also in Adam Again, The Lost Dogs, and The Swirling Eddies.
I the bear, the pastor's here. I the bear, make a your career. He might find out that we're human beings. Bring us all down through the wreck and the ruin.
And he took over this place called the Green Room. And that just became our second home, man. That's where all of us started getting in there recording with him. My second album, Slave Man in the Jungle, they bought me a drum machine for that second album. And all those samples and everything you hear on it, those were all Gene's records in his back room in his house. And he told me, yeah, man, I got all these records. You can come and do the pre-production at my house. So when I pulled up, I was like, oh, man, Gene, you didn't tell me you lived in the hood, homie. So that was Gene, man. And it was a great experience. And just all those records he had, I was like, and I'm a DJ. So he had a lot of classic stuff that I had got rid of.
Because you got rid of all your secular records at one point,
I got rid of everything.
Yeah,
I just kept some of the super classic stuff that I was like, let me just hold on to this.
Soup's connection with Gene Eugene may have been artistically fulfilling, but this could be another reason Christian hip-hop didn't end up dominating the CCM charts. Gene and Ojo Taylor were major players in the underground Christian music industry, the part that loved Cornerstone and True Tunes News. But when it came to Christian radio and the power brokers based in Nashville, they didn't carry much water. The charts were dominated by music from the biggest corporate-owned record labels. The corporate-owned labels were laser-focused on their core customers, the middle-class white suburban moms who bought their kids' music in Christian bookstores. And the CCM marketers were pretty sure those moms didn't want their kids listening to punk rock or rap.
No way, forget it.
And as a result, all these authentic, holy hip-hop projects they championed met a similar fate.
As time went on, I started becoming kind of frustrated. And I remember taking shots at them in little magazines, you know what I mean?
Eventually, Soup couldn't keep quiet about DC Talk.
Like, that ain't hip hop. Because they made a song called I Love Rap Music, right?
I don't know rap music, yeah.
And I was like, man, what is that, man?
Yeah.
And then, they're selling out arenas, and it's just like, it was just crazy.
DC Talk's song, I Love Rap Music, won one of the first Dove Awards in the rap category.
In 83, the beatbox hit. I'm making funky drum sounds from out your lips. But taking on new forms, rappers move from the block. And some mix it with soul, and some mix it with rock. You know what? I love rap music. I always have and I always.
Eventually, Soup's group, SFC, were nominated in the category.
I remember losing to Carmen for Rap Song of the Year. I was like, what?
This is the song that won.
Webster's dictionary say a riot is like an unrestrained uproar in a public place. Turbulent, right in your face with the facts. We're gonna spread God's word and attack every lie you've heard, like the doctrines of him that is still all praise.
I got nominated again, and I lost to the Whinings. So it was
Wow.
so
And
that's just
they're
what it is.
singers. They're like not even.
They're singers. They're not even
Yeah.
rappers, man. Like I said, me and Toby were always cool.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing Creation Festival,
Yeah.
and we were opening up for DC Talk. But before we hit the stage, I ran into Toby, and he says, "Hey, Soup, man, I want to talk to you for a minute, man." So I go back to his pimped out tour bus, and he says to me, he says, "You know, man, I've seen some things, and you know, it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit, but I just wanted you to know that I never said I was hip hop or Mr. Rap or none of that. I didn't say that. They gave me this title." I was in shock that he was even telling me this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, Toby, I'm not even going to try to, you know, lie about, oh, I didn't say that or this. Yeah, you know, I was taking shots at you. I'm frustrated and everything. But what you just did right now is I give you mad respect, man. And I'll never speak in a negative way on you again, brother. And that was it. I walked away, and next thing I know, it's time for us to go on stage. And I walk out, and it's 60,000 people out there, man.
That's a lot of people. That is a lot of people.
Yeah. And, you know, of course, they wanted to see DC Talk, but I think it was a kind of a trippy thing that they were there to see us as well, because, you know, they packed the place out early. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, we got them. This place is already packed out. Let's give it to them. And it was a beautiful night, man.
Freestyling, smiling while I grip this mic and start like piping lyrics that are enlightening to your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your aunt, your nephew, and niece.
Coming up, with the DC Talk beef quashed, maybe Soup can make some inroads with mainstream CCM or even into the secular market.
We got the Christian side kind of locked up. But now we're in the mainstream side. Let's work it. And they didn't want to spend that extra money, man.
Rock that doesn't roll.
Hello, Rock That Doesn't Roll listeners. Andrew Gill here with a quick update on the status of this very podcast that you're listening to right now. Are they even still making new shows, you might ask yourself? Well, the answer is yes. Leah and I have been working on new episodes since January, but it is a little different now. Our PRX Templeton Foundation grant is done, so we are making the show independently, which means the only funding for our work comes from you, the listeners. But we do need more support than we currently have. We both have families, we both have kids, we both have other jobs, and so the time we have to dedicate to this project is quite scarce. Support from listeners like you makes it a justifiable investment of our time. You can do that at patreon.com/RTDR. You can find a link in the show notes there as well. If you can afford it, buy us 1 cup of coffee a month. If you can't afford it, keep listening. That is totally fine. Please tell a friend about it, though, because we also need to get a bigger listener base in order to attract advertisers. If you would like to advertise on the show, email us rtdrpod@gmail.com, and we can work that out. That would be wonderful. Again, we think this show is very important. It's an important aspect of understanding how we got to the point we're in now as a country and as humans who practice religions and enjoy pop culture. Again, patreon.com/RTDR is where you can support us monetarily. And if you can't afford it, tell a friend, tell 5 friends. Thanks so much for listening. Back to the show.
In Los Angeles, at least, the Christian hip hop movement was multi-ethnic. So it did tend to be a bit more multi-ethnic than it was on a more mainstream scale.
Dr. Jonathan Calvillo points out that because holy hip hop came out of certain church cultures, it actually was more multi-ethnic than mainstream rap music in the early days, in terms of collaborators and audiences.
So that's, I think, a unique aspect of the Christian hip hop experience, that it blurred the boundaries of race a bit more. And that's not to say that Black Americans didn't have a critical role in it, because they most certainly did. But what it means is that the church spaces allowed for more cross-racial interaction and engagement.
If it wasn't for the white churches, we wouldn't have been doing gigs at all.
Yeah, why was that?
I would
Why do you
say
think
probably
that is?
80% of my gigs were with white churches, white promoters.
This might be surprising. Well, when it came to playing in Black churches, the whole idea of making Christian hip hop was really complicated.
Because the Black churches felt we were totally evil. I remember going to a Black church that one of the guys at this church had a radio station. So he took us on the radio that night to help promote this gig that he brung us out for. And that was the first time I was ever called devils, not of God, evil.
Wow.
Yeah, they were ripping us. I don't think we got one positive call. And the dude that booked us is like, oh my God, is anybody going to bid this guy? It wasn't funny, but it was funny because I'm like, okay, why are they calling us this? What? I was trying to see their reasoning. It was the same thing that the Christian rockers went through with the white church.
Most of the so-called, it's not Christian, but so-called Christian rock music is coming out of Pentecostal churches.
Is it possible to be hip-hop, holy hip-hop, and release the world? No, because hip-hop is the world. It is the world's culture.
Add another possible reason why hip-hop didn't dominate the Christian charts like it did in the mainstream music industry. Contemporary Christian music and Black gospel music were racially segregated between Black and white from the get-go. That's because market niches are built on simplicity and stereotypes. The complicated racial dynamics at play were probably just easier to avoid getting into for Christian radio stations and marketers.
I got frustrated with Broken Records, which became Brainstorm Artists International.
Yeah.
They had got picked up by Epic Records. And right before they released Phase 3.
Phase 3 was SFC's third album and their biggest bid at commercial success.
Somewhere in there, they just said, we're not going to dump a bunch of money into you guys because we don't know what to do. But we're going to put you in all the stores. So we're in Tower Records. We're all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But if you walk in there, back then, if they didn't hear about you or know who you were, they're not buying your stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I came back to the label and I told them, look, man, how about you help us jump on one of these tours? And we promoted ourselves because we're in the stores, we're there, and they didn't want to spend that extra money, man.
As Soup explains it, he wanted to tour as an opening act for a more established hip-hop act. But at the time, openers were expected to pay for the privilege of performing. They would need their label, Brainstorm Artists International, or their new corporate parent, Epic, to foot that bill.
We weren't bringing in a bunch of money. So they didn't want to spend a bunch of money. But in order to bring in some money, you need to spend some money, right?
Yeah.
So I'm seeing it from both of those sides. And, that's when I really started seeing the business side of the Christian market. DC Talk didn't really have control over, I guess I would say, over their tours because, it was such a big production.
Mm-hmm.
But we were going to get on a DC Talk tour, but they wanted to charge us. And they wanted to see what songs we were doing. Our sound couldn't be booming.
Oh, wow. You couldn't be that loud.
We couldn't be that loud. It was all kind of things going on.
Wow.
That made me, say, I don't even want to do that either.
Yeah.
So it was just, I was like, wow, man. On both sides, it's like that. This is a straight business, man. That vibe is what killed our career, man. I mean, cats had to start getting jobs, man.
I represent the creative, starving artist.
If someone in Soup's camp had been able to foot the bill to fund some of these promotional ideas, it's easy to imagine things turning out differently. So that's another possible reason hip-hop never took over the Christian music charts. But it's also easy to see how confusing it was to market Christian hip-hop in the heyday of NWA, Public Enemy, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Dogg.
It seems labels chose to help the music get made and manufactured, but they didn't push it much further than that.
Talking with Soup and Jonathan about all this, I started kind of cooking up my own theory about why Christian rap didn't really launch in CCM's peak era. So I'd love to hear what you think of it, Leah.
Great. Okay. I'm into it.
Okay, so if CCM's main purpose in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s was to help preserve the innocence of evangelical kids, right, by keeping them from hearing about vices in music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at true hip-hop's deeply held value of authenticity. It could put it at kind of cross purposes with CCM. Any real rap music, even Christian rap, would acknowledge the full experience of being alive, right? Including the existence of many of the vices that CCM didn't want to sully the minds of young evangelicals.
Right.
But therefore, real rap music like SFC was far less useful to the CCM industry than a group like DC Talk that, was happy to say, I don't want it, What do you think about that?
I think that that's a really good theory, in part because there is a philosopher who argues that the mid to late 20th century is dominated by an ethic of authenticity. So to be good is to be authentic. It's why a lot of transgressive art forms didn't really get wide hearing in contemporary Christian music. So the artists that ended up having really sustainable, big-time careers in the business were not the ones who were known for promoting that value for authenticity.
I brought up artists like Kanye West and Snoop Dogg who have dabbled in the Christian market to ask Soup what he thought of them, and he kind of rolled his eyes these guys are being inauthentic and just kind of being opportunistic now that they can coast in and dominate the Christian market. But then on the other hand, there are artists that get a lot of credit for authenticity, like Chance the Rapper and Kendrick Lamar. They often reference their Christian faith in their work that gets lauded by the mainstream music industry, but they don't sand down the rough edges enough to be accepted by the Gospel Music Association.
Right, right.
But even though the industry is a lot smaller, it is interesting to note that of the artists working today, so putting aside worship music, which is most of the contemporary Christian market now, there are probably more rappers than rock bands that are, active going concerns in the mainstream of the CCM industry.
Yeah, I think basically the rockers went into stadium rock in worship. But when it comes to the artists, it really is a lot more diverse. Soup was a trailblazer, and it took a while.
I took everybody where I went back in the day. If you look at my Phase 3 album cover on the inside, I had 75 people with me for my photo shoot.
Yeah.
Every crew that was on the West Coast was in that picture, man.
When we talk about what is now recognizable Christian hip hop, I mean, I have to mention someone like Lecrae.
So tell Mary and Molly, I don't need them to party. Someone woke up in the lobby trying to locate their wallet while I'm 9 holes in trying to work on my hobby. And I wish somebody would get me started. Hey, deuces up to Nipsey, K. Dot and Gang. I'm out here in the West, don't holla at me, man. My bloodstream clean, nothing running through my veins. It's 116, yeah, I'm still unashamed. I call it
Right, because Lecrae has reached heights that few other artists have reached within this scene.
There are even some Christian rappers today that Soup the Chemist likes.
Well, Bizzle and his little crew, that whole clique, man, is putting out really quality hip hop.
They said don't do it because it won't sell. Now look, we ain't taking no L's. God say gold and it won't fail. Now look, we ain't taking no L's. What did you think? I run dry when my supply is the king. I run high, deny and sign with the...
It's like back in the day, we were chasing them.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm starting to even see this ahead of the mainstream, because the mainstream is just, you can buy 5 different artists and you'll swear it's the same individual. You know what I'm saying?
Next time on Rock That Doesn't Roll.
Someone at some point relate it to an Oreo cookie, and once you unlock the cookie, it leaves a film, you know? And I'm like, I didn't need an Oreo cookie analogy. I needed like a penis and vagina analogy.
True love waits. We're talking purity culture and pop music.
If you have a story to share or thoughts on this episode, please call our hotline. You can call anytime. It's 629-777-6336.
To be the first to hear our episodes and for full access to our bonus episodes, join us on Patreon, patreon.com/RTDR, or just tap the link in the show notes.
Find us on Substack and Instagram by searching Rock That Doesn't Roll. And of course, you should give us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you are using to listen right now.
Rock That Doesn't Roll is a Big Questions project from PRX with funding from the John Templeton Foundation. It's produced by us with help from Morgan Flannery and Emmanuel Desarme.
Jocelyn Gonzalez, Neil Catcher, and Dave Nadelberg edit the show. Michael Rayfield mixes it.
Our original score is by Jim Cooper of Infomercial USA. Courtney Florentine provides production oversight. I'm Leah Payne.
And I'm Andrew Gill. Remember, rock all you want, but be careful where you roll.
Their rock is not our rock.
Rock that doesn't